Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. There has been a rise in the past 5 years or so of successful Dagestani fighters within the UFC, within Bellator. You have Khabib Nurmagomedov, former UFC lightweight champion. You have Usman Makhachev, just won the lightweight belt at UFC 280. You have Usman Nurmagomedov making his way up the bantamweight ranks. You have Usman Nurmagomedov, lightweight champion in Bellator. And with this recent rise, you have Magomed Ankalaev. We're going to talk about a lot of these fighters in this video. But with the rise of these fighters, there has been a common trope going around the MMA community, essentially saying the Dagestan fighters are boring. The Dagestan fighters, all they do is hug you and hold you down and this and that. And that basically the fighters from Dagestan are ruining the sport. And I wanted to make a video talking about this because it's something I hear almost on a daily basis. Whether it be on a live stream when we're talking about maybe an Usman Makhachev fight or any fighter from Dagestan's upcoming fight, whether it be on a prediction video for UFC 280 about Charles Oliveira, Usman Makhachev, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on Instagram, this is something that is constantly going around the MMA community. And I feel like it's worth making a video about because I feel like there are certain reasons people feel this way. And, there's going to be a lot of hot takes in this video that are going to piss a lot of people off, no matter what side you're on. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. But there's also other fighters who aren't from Dagestan who I believe are not anywhere near as exciting as some of these, top name Dagestan fighters I'm going to mention. And these same people who complain worship the ground these fighters walk on. So before I get into any of that, let's start talking about some of these very popular Dagestan fighters. You have Khabib Nurmagomedov, who retired. His father passed away. He retired at UFC 254 after he defeated Justin Gaethje. And he's one of the main people that people talk about and say, this guy's boring. All this guy does is grapple and blah, 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 so on and so forth. Let's talk about some of his fights. His last fight was against Justin Gaethje at UFC 254, a massively anticipated fight and a super exciting fight. The way Khabib pressures, the way Khabib looks to just take you down and maul you on the ground, the way Khabib looks to take you down and submit you. First round was super exciting. Almost finishes Justin Gaethje at the end of the first round. And then in the second round, gets him down, immediately submits him. Very exciting fight. I don't know how anybody in their right mind, you're delusional if you don't think that fight was exciting. The fight before that, Dustin Poirier, UFC 242, September 2019. Very exciting fight. Khabib Nurmagomedov pretty much dominates. Dustin had a couple moments on the feet, but a dominant win for Khabib Nurmagomedov and a very exciting fight. The way he pressured him, the way he looked for the takedowns, the way he dominated him on the ground and eventually gets a rear naked choke. The fight before that against Conor McGregor back at UFC 229. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, Conor won the third round, and maybe he did on some judges' scorecards. Khabib Nurmagomedov in that third round stood flat-footed in front of Conor and was slapping him in the stand-up. This fight was super exciting. Khabib dominated him in the first round. Khabib almost stopped him with brutal ground and pound in the second round. Khabib stood with him and taunted him in the third round, slapping him on the feet. And then Khabib took him down and submitted him with a neck crank in the fourth round. Super exciting fight. Also, you had the striker versus grappler dynamic where a lot of people thought maybe Khabib's going to get knocked out if he can't get the takedown. I don't know how anyone can call that fight boring either. You get back to the Ally Quinta fight. Okay, say what you will about that. I don't think it was particularly the most exciting fight I've ever seen. Not particularly boring. Edson Barboza fight went to decision. I thought that was a pretty exciting fight. It was a dominant one-sided fight, but I still think it was exciting. Let's move on to another fighter. Khabib's retired. Why are we even talking about it? Usman Makhachev, the new UFC lightweight champion. A lot of people calling Usman Makhachev boring. His last fight against Charles Oliveira. If you think Usman Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira was boring, you need to watch a different sport. This was a great fight. This was an exciting fight. The fight was primarily striking early. Maybe it was 50-50, honestly, because Islam did get a takedown in the first round, I believe. There was some striking before that, but it's not like all he did was grapple in this fight. And he eventually drops Charles Oliveira on the feet, which sets up the submission, submits him via arm triangle in the second round. Great fight, dominant performance. Fight before that against Bobby Green, went out there and absolutely wrecked Bobby Green, took him down, flattened him out, and just TKO'd him in the first round, like 3 minutes in. Fight before that, Dan Hooker took him down, immediately submitted him via Kimura. Fight before that against Thiago Moises, Not the most action-packed fight, but not a terrible fight. Eventually gets the finish. Fight before that, submits Drew Dober. So at this point, Islam Makhachev's on a 5-fight winning streak and a 5-fight stoppage streak, and culminating with a win of the lightweight title over Charles Oliveira. I don't know how you can say Islam Makhachev is boring. I can't even fathom it. Of his 23 wins, he has 15 wins by stoppage in his pro MMA career. Okay, moving on. Usman Nurmagomedov. 3 fights in the UFC, so not a lot to go off of in terms of his UFC career. His last fight against Nate Maness, decision win, not the most action-packed fight, but not particularly boring. Just out-grappled him, outstruck him in this fight. Fight before that, submits Brian Kelleher in the first round, rear naked choke. Dominant performance there. Fight before that, submits Sergey Morozov, who just got a win over Journey Newsom this past UFC Vegas 66. Exciting performance, dominant performance. Not a boring fighter at all. And I could just go on and on and on. You have Usman Nurmagomedov, the lightweight champion in Bellator. I mean, his last fight against Patricky Pitbull was pretty exciting, primarily striking. Fight before that, stops Chris Gonzalez, and so on and so forth. TKOs and stoppages, 16 wins, and you have literally 13 of them by stoppage for Usman Nurmagomedov. Zabit Magomedsharipov, he's kind of retired, may come back. If you have not ever seen Zabit Magomedsharipov fight, he's one of the most exciting fighters I've ever seen. Primarily a striker, super dynamic, super crazy, super flashy. It's a shame that he's retired, and I hope that he comes back one day because he's one of the most exciting fighters. One more fighter I wanted to mention, Magomed Ankalaev, almost recently became the light heavyweight champion. I would consider Magomed Ankalaev primarily a striker. He's one on this list that you could actually say is kind of a boring fighter. I don't think he's crazy boring. I don't think, you don't want to watch him at all, but he's not the most exciting. But again, this guy's primarily a striker. He's not the grappler that a lot of people complain about. The fight against Jan Blachowicz, Dana White absolutely shit on. I did not think this was a boring fight. I thought this was a solid fight, not the greatest fight, but it wasn't. We're not talking Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis here, okay? We're not talking Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza 2, which was an absolute abomination. The Anthony Smith fight, TKOs him. The fight before that against Thiago Santos left a lot to be desired. The Volkan Ozdemir fight was okay, not the greatest, but, a little bit boring. The fight against Nikita Krylov, not the greatest again. Out of all these fighters that I've mentioned, I would say Magomed Ankalaev is probably the most boring fighter on this entire list, but I don't particularly consider him boring. And I'm going to talk about some other fighters here in a minute that are not from Dagestan that I'm going to compare and contrast, but I don't even think these fighters are boring either. I'm just proving a point here. And I believe there is 3 major reasons that there's this group of people that consider all Dagestani fighters boring. They're like, oh, they're boring. And I think one of the major reasons is the grappling, okay? Khabib Nurmagomedov, amazing grappler. Islam Makhachev, amazing grappler. Usman Nurmagomedov, I would say he's primarily a striker, but he does mix in the grappling very well, and he is dominant when he does use it. Same for Usman Nurmagomedov. I would consider him a striker. But, I think it's kind of like maybe, 75-25 as far as Dagestan grappler to striker. I mean, we recently had Rinat Fakhretdinov go out there and dominate Brian Battle with his grappling. But I think a lot of people just don't want to see the grappling. And here's what I have to say to those people. If you don't enjoy grappling, okay, go watch boxing. This is MMA. This is the mixing of every single aspect of martial arts, okay? You have striking, you have kicking, you have kickboxing, you have jiu-jitsu, you have grappling, you have wrestling, you have all those things combined into one, and that's what makes MMA fun to watch. So if you don't enjoy grappling, you don't enjoy wrestling, you don't enjoy ground and pound, go watch boxing. It's right there for you. You can watch 2 guys stand up. You can go watch kickboxing. That's out there. You can watch it. I think that's one of the reasons. One of the other reasons, and I partially understand this one, okay? I do believe the fan base for guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov, for guys like Islam Makhachev, for guys from the Dagestani region, I do believe they are particularly annoying, okay? And it is a cult-like following. I talk about it with guys like Conor McGregor. I talk about it with guys like Sean O'Malley. These weird MMA cult-like followings are unbelievable annoying. They're unbelievably annoying. I mean, to go out there and anytime, if you pick Charles Oliveira, all of a sudden you hate all Muslims. All of a sudden, you're some kind of just absolute idiot because how dare you pick against the Dagestani fighter? So I think that factors into it. I think a lot of people are like, well, this fan base is annoying, so let's be equally as annoying. That's essentially what's going on here. They're seeing how annoying the Dagestani, the Muslim fan base of some of these fighters are, and they just want to counteract it. And I find them both annoying, to be honest. I'm right down the middle. If you're an exciting fighter, I enjoy watching you, regardless of what region you're from, regardless your skill set. If you're exciting, you're just plain exciting. Now, another reason that I believe, and I don't think this is the vast majority, but I do believe this exists. And I do believe some people do deny this exists. But when I see these fighters, and I see Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's one of the most exciting fighters I've ever seen. And here's one of my hot takes. I believe Khabib Nurmagomedov, for me personally, you may disagree with this, everyone can have their own opinion. For me, watching Khabib Nurmagomedov, I believe he is more exciting than Conor McGregor. And I know a lot of people are going to try to say, you're crazy, you're out of your mind. The fact that Khabib goes out there, puts relentless pressure on guys. They know what he wants to do. He wants to drag you to the ground and beat you up. And then the level of ground and pound he had, and the level of submission offense that he has, for me, he was one of my favorite fighters to watch. I was devastated when he retired. I believe he's more exciting than Conor McGregor. Some people are going to say Conor McGregor's more exciting. I think Conor McGregor's very exciting. But for me, if I had to choose a preference, it'd be Khabib Nurmagomedov. So that's a hot take. But I do believe there is a portion of the fan base that does hate these fighters because they are Muslim. I honestly do believe that. People are saying just because of their religion, just because of the part of the world they're from, they just automatically don't like them. And that's just a fact. That is unequivocally happening. I don't know on what percentage, on what scale, because if you look at a Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, if you look at the most recent Islam Makhachev fights, and you sit there and say these fighters are boring, I can't help you. I can't help. There's got to be a reason. And, you go to Umar, you go to Usman Nurmagomedov, primarily strikers in my opinion. So if it's not the grappling, what else could it be? And the reason I say that this group of fans exist that hate Khabib Nurmagomedov, that hate Islam Makhachev, that hate, Magomed Ankalaev because they're Muslim. The reason I say that is because some of these same fans worship other fighters who I believe have a far less exciting fight style. And just to mention a few, and again, I don't think any of these fighters that I'm going to mention here in a second are boring, but I believe they are less exciting than the likes of Khabib, than the likes of Islam Makhachev, than the likes of Umar. First up on the list, we have Sean Strickland, okay? I enjoy watching Sean Strickland fight. Not the most exciting fighter. When's the last time he's had a finish? Brendan Allen, almost 3 years ago at this point, or a little over 2 years ago. The Uriah Hall fight, not super exciting, almost put me to sleep. Jack Hermanson fight was all right, not particularly exciting. The Alex Pereira fight, he got KO'd in the first round. You can't really, decipher that in terms of excitement. And then the Jarrett Cannonier fight, I don't think it was the worst fight ever, but it wasn't particularly great. And people worship the ground Sean Strickland walks on because he has a unique personality, and people find it entertaining. But you don't see those people, same people saying, oh, Strickland's so boring, and all he does is throw jabs and this and that. And I just think it's crazy that those same people who are saying Islam is boring or Khabib was boring are worshiping Sean Strickland. And then you move on to a guy who I actually find particularly exciting, but in terms of finishing ability, in terms of fight style, I think guys like Islam and Khabib and Umar and Usman are far more exciting than Colby Covington. When's the last Colby Covington finish? Tyron Woodley. That was a weird rib injury in the 5th round. Outside of that, he hasn't finished a fight in the UFC since 2016. Since 2016. And again, I don't think Colby's boring. But there is people that just ride Colby Covington and pretend like Colby Covington's so great. He's not finishing guys, and he's primarily a grappler. Does he mix the pressure and the volume in? Yes. So he's kind of a good comparison, really, but he's not finishing guys. He's just putting volume on them, then taking them down. Jorge Masvidal fight, not particularly exciting, just grappling nonstop for the most part. Use the pressure, use the striking a little bit, but no different than any Khabib Nurmagomedov fight where he does the same thing and then he gets the finish and he's more aggressive. The Kamaru Usman fight, he lost. That was an exciting fight. You can't say anything about that. Either Kamaru Usman fight, both of them were exciting and primarily striking. Tyron Woodley fight, boring. The Robbie Lawler fight was domination. That was primarily on the feet. But my point is, He's not getting finishes, and he is primarily a grappler, primarily a wrestler. The other fighter I wanted to mention that has a similar cult-like following, Bryce Mitchell. Again, I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I know someone's going to say down in the comments, you're calling these guys boring. I do not think Sean Strickland's boring. I do not think Colby Covington's boring. I do not think Bryce Mitchell's boring. My point is, you look at Bryce Mitchell. Of his last few wins, all decision wins. Of course, he dominated Edson Barboza with his grappling. Good comparison to the Dagestani guys. Didn't see anybody calling him out for being a boring fighter. Same thing with Andre Fili. Used the grappling to win a decision against him. Same thing for Charles Rosa. His last finish was in December 2019. I was live at that event the last time Bryce Mitchell got a finish. It was a twister. That's awesome. But the majority of his UFC fights, that's his only finish in the UFC, is that twister. That is his only finish. And you don't see anybody going out there and saying, Bryce Mitchell is such a boring fighter. Colby Covington is such a boring fighter. Sean Strickland's such a boring fighter, when they're not even getting finishes. So I just think it's a really annoying thing that goes down the MMA community, and it's constantly regurgitated. And again, I do believe the vast majority has to do with not liking grappling, also being annoyed with the Dagestani Muslim fan base who can be crazy and annoying themselves, and a cult-like following. But then I do believe also there is people that do not like guys like Khabib, guys like Islam, just based on their religion and also the region of the world they are from. And I think it's something that really is just, there's no place for it. There's no place for it. If you don't enjoy watching these guys fight, if you don't enjoy watching them fight, go watch boxing. Again, you have guys that are strikers like Magomed Ankalaev. You're still lumping in. So it's not his grappling. And I know he mixes in the grappling. You have guys like Zabit Magomed Sharipov, primarily a striker, one of the most exciting strikers we've ever seen. He's lumped in with the Dagestani guys. And I know he's retired, so he's not a great example. But Usman Nurmagomedov, striker, lightweight champion, relatively exciting fighter. Umar Nurmagomedov has some of the best kicks in the bantamweight division. He's lumped in there. And even the guys that are primarily grappling, they are constantly looking for the finish. And, I already mentioned him once in this video, but Rinat Fakhretdinov. If you thought that dominant performance over Brian Battle was boring, then don't watch MMA. Don't watch it anymore, because that's what MMA is. It's the clash of styles. It's strikers versus grapplers. It's jiu-jitsu guys versus wrestlers. Without these clash of styles, the sport is not as fun as it is. So I just think it's delusional to call these Dagestani fighters boring. I think, some people just come from a place of ignorance where they're just like, oh, I don't feel like watching grappling. I only want to see some brawl street fight. And if you want to see that, then go to your local bar and watch two drunk guys fight in the parking lot. I'm sure you can find that if that's what you want to see. I'm interested in seeing high-level guys who are elite in multiple aspects of MMA and putting them against each other in some of the best fights that we can put together. I mean, matchups like Islam Makhachev, Rafael Vaziev, I'm dying to see. Matchups like, Umar Nurmagomedov versus some of the upper echelon guys in the bantamweight division like Song Yadong or Ricky Simone. That's a fight I want to see. And if you continue to complain these guys are boring, I ask you to comment down below and let me know, why do you think Islam Makhachev is boring? Because he's going out and dominating guys? That's the only answer I can come up with that's somewhat reasonable. Well, I don't like watching them because every fight they go out and dominate the guy. That is the only answer to this question that is even the slightest bit reasonable. But I believe people are just delusional. I think people are a little bit crazy, and they just continue to say this over and over and over again until they just believe it. And it's just flat out not true. The Dagestani fighters, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, Saeed Nurmagomedov, I would consider him primarily a striker. I know he just got the guillotine win over Sadyukab Kakramanov. Exciting fight there. And people lump them all in together and say they're boring. It's just flat out incorrect. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.